What's up, y'all? Jason back for episode 3 of the full site build. If you guys watched the last two videos, we started building out the Mr. Plumber site. We were working on the header the last time or in our last video, and there's a few things to finish up, so let's dive into that. I'm going to go ahead and launch Etch in a new tab here. I'm going to go over to my template manager, click into my index template, and this is where we are from last time. One thing I want to do that we did not cover last time, and I don't know how it slipped past me, but I was thinking about it one night after I did this, so I wanted to come back and talk through it. So for this, we accept, and it shows the Visa card, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express. We want to actually add in some screen reader text with this so that it makes sense for someone who can't visually see this. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and launch into our component here, and in our top bar, we're going to go to that payment wrapper. So there's a few different ways we can do this. And I think what the best way for me to do this is going to be to basically duplicate this text here, but I'm going to add to it and say we accept Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express. And that way it'll read in one nice sentence for them versus adding the text to each icon and making it have to jump to each icon in order to say it. Because that is the other option, is to individually put the text on each icon, which is what you'll probably see me do once we get to like social icons for Facebook and Instagram, which will be in our footer. But again, so what I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to duplicate my text here, so you'll see it show up again. And on the second one, I'm going to just type in Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express. So what I want to do on this one now is add in a class, and ACSS has a utility class built in, and I believe it is going to be called hidden-accessible. If I type that right, you can see it disappear on us, but it's still in the tree here. And I'm actually going to put that first in our DOM here. And next, what I want to add here is going to be some aria hidden true on the other text. So I can do this right in my selector again and just type aria hidden equals true. And I'm going to copy and paste this because I'm going to add that to all of the icons as well. So copy it, click add, and you can see it's now showing down here and in our HTML over here. Let's go ahead and add it to all of these. And what that is doing is it's just hiding these from the screen reader so that it doesn't try to read any of the text for it, because we have it set to read this hidden accessible, that we accept Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express, which you can see right here. So if you ever need to see that in the builder again, you can just remove that hidden accessible class, but really you shouldn't need to, because we can edit it both in the HTML panel and the element settings panel over here. So that was just one quick thing I wanted to add to that I missed last time. So I'm going to go ahead and exit that. And we are back to our navigation here. One thing I did do outside of the recording is in my loop manager, I went in and added all of my services in here. So that you guys didn't have to just watch me copy and paste a bunch of links. But I got those all in here, and you can see them up at the top here. And you can see if we have drop downs, those are showing up here. But next what I need to do is actually stylize this a bit more. So in order to do that, on my Etch nav component, I'm going to right click and edit component. Once I click on my nav here, I'm gonna pull this up so you guys can see it a lot better. In here we have a bunch of local scoped variables that we can start to edit to see what we want our styling to be. So in my actual Figma, I don't have anything showing here of how I want that styled exactly, but we can just kind of go through and make sense of this. So typically what I like to do is I actually like to make my font weight bigger on all of these. And if we look through our nav here, we can see if that's listed on any of the items here. And if I remember right from looking at this, it is not actually there. So what we can do then is scroll down into the actual navigation CSS and look for that and stylize that there. So let's just search through here for a second and see if we can figure out where that's going to be. Which I believe it's going to be this one right here. So let's go ahead and just test this out and do font weight of, let's go 600, and you can see that adds that in there. Let's see what 500 looks like. I think I'm gonna go with 500 on this. One thing you can notice is my logo over here just got smaller. So we're gonna have to come back and fix that as well. One thing we can do is change this into a variable, just like these other ones. So what I'm gonna do is go var and let's go nav font weight, and I'm leaving that 500 in there just as a fallback. So I'm gonna bring that up back to the top here, and we're going to put that probably just right in here. All right, so we got that added in. The next thing I want to do is set my hover color. So right now it's going with my primary color, it looks like. So let's see if we can find that in here. One other thing I did notice when testing is that it does set a underline for my active item. And for that, I actually want to set that to none. Usually in my navigation, I don't like to have underlines in them, but that's also, just a design preference. So I'm going to leave that off. And what I'll end up doing is coming down and finding the active CSS in here. And we can make some edits to it. Sometimes it takes some scrolling to figure out where exactly that is in here. All right, it's right in here because it's set to our current page. So you can see our active item there. What I actually like to do typically is just set my color a little bit differently. So right now when nothing is showing, or we're not hovered and we're not on a current page, it looks like we're just with our standard text color, which I'm happy with. But if we look at this, I'm gonna look at setting this to primary dark, and we can see what that'll look like in a little bit. I may come back and change that a little bit. And then next we wanted to change the hover color. And I believe that is going to be up in our actual variable colors. Let's take a look here and see if we can find that. All right, it's this one right here, our nav link color hover. And I think on this one, I'm gonna go ultra dark. Which you can't actually see much of a difference. So maybe what I'm actually gonna do is change that up a little bit to our secondary. So it's gonna be that blue color, and I'm just gonna go with secondary dark. So you can see it changes a little bit there. All right. And you can see as we hover on these, we get that as well. So next what I wanna do is actually change my hover color of these drop-down items. And I believe that's gonna be right here. So our nav background color is gonna be listed up here, which is set to white. So we can go ahead and change that to and you can see when I do that, it sets it for everything, which is what I do not want to see happen here. So sometimes you got to test that out and see what happens. So I'm going to set that back to white because I want those to be white up in here. And then for the mobile, we can change that a little bit. So if I come back down to my drop downs, I can just change this right here. And I'm going to go primary, ultra, light. And now we can see those are fixed there. That just gives us a little bit of a different color as those pop out. And then what we could even do is see if it has a background color for that. And it does, but it does not look like we have it for just the drop down. So if I change it here, it's probably going to change it on the main one too. So let's go ahead and find that down below. And we're specifically looking for the hover text. So we don't want this one because that's going to be our main item up here. We want to actually find the drop down one. All right. So we have that listed in here, but this is not showing our hover styling for those. So let's see if it's a little farther down. And I don't see it in here, so we may need to add that in. But let me just double check here. Because I believe if I set this to a different color right now, it's going to be, right now it's just pulling in our white, which is what we want. So I think what I'm going to do is copy this. Just want to double check here. I'm going to take this out for 1 second and test it. Yep, so it did do what I was expecting that to do there. So I don't want to actually change that there. We want the actual drop down, which I believe is going to be this one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it in, and I'm going to take all of this out and just leave that background color. And I'm going to set that to my primary. We were ultra light. Let's just go light and see what happens here. And it helps if I put the hover on there. All right, so that was not what I wanted. Just take a look here. And I think we actually need this nav item. Let's go back up and look here for a second. I think what I'm actually going to try is duplicating this one instead, except I'm going to bring it back down to this spot. And what I want to do is I'm going to take the button out. If I change my background color here, we can test this out. So it's still hitting those, but it works on those, okay? So this is where I believe I might have to copy this in as well. Okay, that did not do what I was hoping it would. I might have to come back to this in a little bit here. Sometimes just taking my brain away from it and coming back to it will help me solve the problem. That's a lot of times what I like to do in situations like this where I get stuck on something, is I just take a break from it, come back to it, and usually I can solve what I'm looking for. So let's go ahead and take this out. And this is back where what we wanted. So I'm going to click save just so we have that done. I'm happy with that. And now if I come to our front end here, click refresh, we have this working right. And because none of these are actually items, my active is not actually going to work. So clicking this just opens and closes, where if I go in and actually click an item is where we get that. So we're not going to actually see our active item. So we'll come back to that in a little bit here. I'm going to exit because I think we're okay there for a moment. Actually, one thing, since we are in here, is I know once we get into our mobile menu, we're probably going to want to change our mobile background color, which is right here. So I'm going to do that right away. I usually like to go like let's go neutral, trans, let's go 50. And when I expand this out, you're going to see we get this color mix. And I can't actually test this right now inside the builder. So let's hit save. I'm going to come to the front end, refresh. We're going to inspect. And we're going to go down to our mobile size. Get that out of my way here. And as I bring this down, now we can start to test. So that's not going to be quite what we want. We can probably play around with this a little bit right in here, just to see what best works here. Now, normally when you design, you probably would have had the mobile stuff all figured out here, which I did not. So excuse me for not doing a better job on that. Let's see if I can find that in here. It's right here. Let's go 80. Maybe we want to go something actually much lighter. So neutral, ultra light, 80. And you know what, I'm going to stick with the neutral ultralight, but I'm going to take that out of that. So let's jump back in here, and I'm just going to take my color mix away. I'm going to hit save there, hit refresh, click on here, and that looks a little bit better. I'm happy with that. It gives us some separation from the other white color, and then we still have that yellow on the drop down items. All right, so let's go back out of here. I'm going to hit exit. We can bring this back to full size. So just double click that and it pops over to back to full width. So next we want to start working on our sizing here as we go down to mobile. So some of this stuff we're going to drop out of here, some of it we're going to leave. So as we do that, let's go into our actual header here. I'm going to do edit component, and probably the very first thing I'm going to do is come up to my logo link. I need to change that to our home page first. And then as far as sizing on our actual image, we want to, let's see here. None of these are set to flex currently. I'm not sure if that's going to work for us, so we can test it out here. It did not. Okay, let me inspect that. I think that might have actually done what I wanted it to. Let's come back. So this should actually be 0. And I think that's going to work because our inner here is set to flex. But we will test that out in a moment here. I'm going to hit save on that. Next, I'm going to come over to my button wrapper. And on this, I'm going to add in a media query. And let's see here. $768 is when we get that. So to do that, we can use our media query right here in our quick actions bar, and it's going to set it to whatever we're at right now. So I want this to be 768. And I'm actually going to change to less than, and I'm going to go to display none. Hit save on that. And you can see when we have that there, that button disappears. All right, perfect. So I'm really happy with that. Next, we're going to do the same thing for our we accept. So I'm going to come back up. And probably what I can do is just copy and paste this right over on my payment wrapper because it should do the same exact thing. So now as we slide on down, we can see that disappears at 768. And it might even be the case that we could keep it in there a bit longer. Maybe all the way down to here. Yeah, I think that actually works pretty good. So sometimes just play around with it, see what works best as you bring your sizing of your device or screen down. See where it makes sense for that to leave. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to click save, back to our front end. I'm going to refresh. We're going to start to bring this down. And we may even need to drop out our button a little bit sooner. So we have pretty big nav going on here. Either that, or I think maybe we'll switch to our, it looks like it needs to happen pretty quickly. So one thing I'm going to come back in and do is, first off, on my button wrapper, I'm going to take this out. No, I'm going to leave that for now. We're going to exit. And on my component here, my nav component, I want to change my spacing a little bit. So right now our inline padding is 1 rem. So if I take that out, I'm going to drop it down to 0.5, 0.75 looks good for me. Okay, I'm going to leave that there. And then if I scroll down, let's see if I have my variable to change where it switches to mobile. All right, and that is at 768. Let's set that to let's go 1100. So down in our interface here, I can show and hide that to make it a little bit easier. So if I scroll back down, we're going to have this switch out at 1100. And then I'll need to fix that on our burger component as well. So if we scroll down in here, we should find where that appears as well. And it's right here. So now as we get smaller and smaller, you can see it jumps. And I think that's going to work okay for us for now. So I'm going to hit save. I may come back later on once we get further into the build and change that out a little bit more. Let's see what that looks like on the front end here with everything working properly. I think I'm pretty happy with that for now. Okay, I'm going to take off my responsiveness there. Hit refresh. Everything's working there. If we tab through everything, we can see our keyboard navigation is working. If I go backwards, you can see my skip to footer at the top, skipped content. And you can see those are currently the same color, so I may change those as well. I'm going to exit out my skip link. Let's take a look at those here. For skip link, we can go and change our button background on these. All right, let's test that out. So I'm going to add another class here because I don't want to overwrite our skip link utility class here. I think what I will call this is just my skip button. And I'm going to copy that because I want to use it on both of these. And then I can go back and get that colors from over here. We want the button background. And we'll set that to secondary. And we want our button text color to be, and this did not expand out for me. I just wanted secondary there. And let's go ultra light here. We'll give that a test here. And that did not override. It actually refresh. Alright, so that's getting overridden. So we need to make it, we have a specificity of 0, 1, 0 and 0, 1, 0 here. Let's try. And I don't think this, trying to think how I want to best do this. I don't just want to put important on it because that's gonna not do what we want. Maybe what I can do here is put my skip link second. And let's test that out once here quick. Okay, that did not do it either. Sometimes the order does play a role in this, so we can always test that out. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to take this out. I don't know if it's going to let me do this. It did not. Okay. Put that back on. Yeah, I'm gonna come back to that. I don't want to waste too much time thinking about this, and as I'm trying to do this on video, it always, my brain decides it does not want to work as fast as I hoped it would. All right. So we've got that all set up there. We've got this good here. I'm gonna double check in here. I said we'd come back to this. So let's take a look again. Make this bigger. I want to see what we have on these. Nav link, nav item. Okay, so we don't specify specific drop-down items. Okay. Just looking through the CSS here to figure out where I want to set this up and what's going to be the best way to do it. And this may be something I come back in one of the next episodes as well. I might play with this off screen, solve it, so you guys don't have to sit here and watch me troubleshoot through this. But that is some of the upside to doing videos like this is you don't, it's not always super buttoned up and easy for everyone to do. We do run into issues. When you're just cutting a video, it makes it a lot easier to take a lot of this stuff out and solve the problem outside the video. But sometimes it's helpful to go through and look at how you want to set this up to make sure that it works best. Because I know this is going to be the CSS that's affecting our hover. But I want to only affect the items that are inside that list. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to that in the next one. So let's exit out of this, and we're at like roughly the 40-minute mark. Let's start on our footer, because that was originally my goal of this next one, was to mostly work on the footer. So I'm going to start on that. By doing that, I'm going to add in my section, call this our footer, change it to a footer in here, set this to my inner. And if we go back and look at our Figma document, and I scroll all the way down here to our footer, you can see we have a dark footer here. Probably going to set this up as a grid. All right. So for this, I want to also add in another container, which is going to be my bottom bar. Let me take this out of there. It does. Put this back on top. I'm going to make this, well, we'll come back to that actually. So inside my inner, I am going to put a heading in here, which is going to be an H2, and on that heading, we're just going to call this our footer. And on here, I'm going to add that same screen reader text as well. So it's going to be hidden accessible. And what that does is it just hides that heading, but still gives a semantic heading to this section, so that it has some, so when a screen reader user comes to it, it actually calls it out as the footer for them. All right, so also in my inner, I want to add in a flex div here, and we'll call this the content wrapper. In my bottom bar, I think all we're going to need is text down here. I don't think I'm going to need, and we'll just call this copyright. All right, inside my content wrapper here is where we're going to build out our 4 columns here. So we'll add 4 different divs in there. And I'm going to go flex divs for these. We got 4 of them, and I'll probably just call them column. So I probably should have named that first and then duplicated. And this one, I'm going to add in a heading and a link, but we're going to have to actually, because we're going to loop here, we're going to make an actual looped menu, just like we did on our main nav. And then over here, I think I'm just going to put these links in without a loop. So we just need it on that one. All right, let's jump back in here. So I need to wrap this in a div. And I want to wrap this in a div again, because I want to make this my UL, my LI, we'll call this footer link. And on this one, one thing I want to double check here is, yep, we did wrap that UL in a nav. So let's do the same thing here. Wrap it in another div. Call this my nav. And we want our ARIA label to be footer navigation on this one. So I'm just going to add that in right away. All right, we got that set in there. Let's see, what else do we want to do here? In this column, I'm going to move this over so it's easier to switch back and forth here. I'm going to need my logo, some text, and a wrapper. So go with div. Inside my div, I'm going to put an image. I'm going to put some text, and then I'm going to put another flex wrap. This is going to be my media wrapper. Call this logo. Social wrapper down here. Call this my footer lead. And in my social wrapper, let's take a quick look here. So we do have these as probably boxed items. So I'm going to put in a div, and then inside that we'll put our SVG. I'm just going to duplicate that in a second. This I want to be my social wrapper, social icon. Just trying to get this all in here before we BEM all of this. All right, so this column I'm going to duplicate. It's not going to end up getting a loop, which we'll come back to in a little bit. And then I'm going to duplicate it one more time. And instead of having a nav in here, do another flex div. We're going to have our hours in here, which I'm just going to add as text. And then I'm going to do one more flex div. And we'll call this the same day card. And for that, we're going to add in I don't think that is going to actually need a heading on this. This is just going to be more of like a span type look here, even though I'm going to keep it as just paragraph text. I'm going to still call it a heading, and we'll call this the description. What I'm going to do is BEM this by itself, and I'm going to make a component out of that because I'll probably end up using it later. I'm going to save and exit that. I'm going to come in and put my logo in up here right away. And again, we want to pull that dynamically. So that's options.metabox. And this is where I can't remember without seeing the text. I believe it was biz settings dot logo. Can double check that in a moment here. Sometimes it's always easier to just put that in on one of these pieces of text. And it's not pre-filling for me. I'm going to take that out of there, go back to my media here, and I'm going to save that. I know that's not right. I need to double check on this. It is biz settings with an underscore, okay. When in doubt, let's check it out up here and we can just copy and paste it right from here. I'm not sure what I had different on that one. Oh, we got it in there, so problem solved on that one. Alt text, we did site dot name. We'll call it logo. Having a tough time typing today. All right, we got that in there. I think I have everything I need. I'm gonna hit save here just to make sure I have everything saved. And let's go ahead and bend this out. So now for my background color, I can go background of secondary dark. All right. And that makes everything dark down there. We come down to our bottom bar. I want to separate this out a little bit. Let's go make this bigger again. Padding block is going to be space XS, I think. S. And on top of it, we want don't know if I'm going to put this here, if it's going to go above this, but let's do that for now. Text light there. And for this, we can add in some copyright text. I can never remember the shortcut for the copyright there, so I always just copy it from one of my other sites. And then we can use some dynamic data here. So if we go site dot current date dot date format, and we put a Y in there. we get our current year. So that way I'm not going to have to come back in here every single year and change that out, which is very nice. So I got that. And then I want to put in, what else did we have here? The site name. And in between that, I want that nice dot. Which I can also never remember how to make, so I'll just copy and paste it over. All right, so we got that part done. I'm gonna hit save. Let's copy over this text right away. Get that in there. This should be color of text light. Our headings should actually all be H3s. Text light as well there. And we want our text transform to uppercase on those. So our first one here is going to be services. Our next one down is going to be contact. Actually, that one should have been ours. I skipped one. Here we go. H3 contact. All right, so we got those in there. Got our logo in there. Let's make our content wrapper into a grid here. And we can use a recipe. Let's start with just grid 4 for now. I know I'm gonna probably change this, but I just want to get this set so I can start styling it all, at least. And here is where I actually think I want to put my padding inline of gutter. And I'm going to take that off our bottom bar because we don't want it in there. That should be able to go all the way to the end. Back up to the top, we want our padding block start to be our section pad. Can I ever remember which one it is? Section padding block is the one we're looking for. All right, so we got that in there so it matches the rest of ours on the top. Okay, I'm happy with that. On my inner, I'm not going to add any other padding on that. I want to leave that as is. For my logo, I want this to be a little bit smaller. Inline size, and we'll go to rem. Just like we did up top. And you will notice that some of the text is harder to read here. What I normally would do is get a light version of their logo, but for this build, I'm just going to leave this as is right now because I don't have another version. So I'm just going to leave it as is, even though that's not how I would want the end product to look. I would want that to actually be a light version so that you can read this blue text. Otherwise, I would probably put like just a white background on here maybe. But for now, I'm going to leave that as is. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with our text here. We can go down to our social icons. I only have one in here so far, but I'll add in my second one. This I want to be a flex row. I'm happy with the gap that we have in there. My first one is going to be Facebook. And my second one is going to be Instagram. It's right above it. All right, so we got both of those in there. I'm going to strip the color on both of those because I want these to be, I'm going to go with that. And I think these are probably going to need a fill color. We'll test this out here. And that is what I wanted. Okay, perfect. So now on my actual wrapper, I can go background of white, expand that out. Padding, space, excess. Radius is going to be our radius. And I see a slight issue we have here. I want these. I have to copy this out. Should have been footer social icon wrapper. Paste that in. Take that off. And this one, I'm going to add that in here. Take that off. And here. There we go. I just want my icons to be a little bit smaller. Let's go. If I look in here, I think I had those set to inline size 2 rem of 30 pixels. I'm going to bring those up just a little bit. I like that. So the other thing we need to do, just like we did in the ones above, is I'm going to add in some text here. and I'll call this my screen reader text. And I'll duplicate, well, actually I'm gonna add. My hidden accessible. Now I'll duplicate that, drag it down, and I went too far. And that one should be on Instagram. All right, and now that I've set this up, I actually really wanted my wrappers here to be my link. So the good thing is I can just change this to an A. So we'll just have to add in the actual link information here. So I got that set to A. Up here I can go href equals I'm just going to go slash for now because I want to get this in here on that one and on this one, because what I'm going to actually end up doing is options dot metabox dot biz settings dot facebook dot url. We'll see if that's the right one. I'm gonna copy and paste that here, and we'll change this to Instagram. If I come back over to my custom fields on social, Facebook, Instagram is my ID, so that should hopefully work. I'm gonna hit save. Let's look on the front end here. Does not look like that worked. I believe that should have been right. I don't know why this is not showing me. Because if I pull from here, okay, there it is actually showing. Let's come back in here. And see if I can figure out what we wanted here. Really should have been the URL, I believe. Yeah, Facebook, or maybe we just need .facebook, okay. We'll try that on this one and just go with Instagram. Let me go back in here and see. I'll click away. Okay, so that is working there. Okay, let's hit save. Double check these. So the Facebook one is working, the Instagram one is not. Let's double check that. Helps if you spell it right. All right. Instagram is working. Perfect. So next thing I want to do on these links is we're going to add in target equals blank. Copy that, hit add, do the same up here. And that way, when we click them, should automatically open in a new tab, and it does. Perfect. Other thing I like to put on here is rel no opener on both of them. Okay, so we got that done. I'm happy with that. Let's go over to our loop. On our next one, I'm going to close out this column. And let's see here. Okay, on our list item, we are going to wrap in a loop. And you can see that disappears on us. What I do want to do is actually style this right away. And actually what I probably could have done is link color of white. And link hover color of text light muted. I'll have to double check that. Inspect. Set this to hover. Link color hover. That was close. Sometimes you get them backwards. But that's the nice thing is you can just go to the front end and look up what that's going to be. They usually try and set them up in automatic CSS to be exactly what you would think they would be. Like you have link color hover. So that was my bad for just thinking backwards. But when you're trying to think, talk, and type at the same time, it gets a little bit confusing. All right, so we got that styled, at least for now. One thing I want to double check. I didn't make those any bigger. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to hit save, and we're going to come back up to the loop. I'm going to open my loop manager. I'm going to copy all of this and we're going to make a new one. And we're going to call this, it's going to be JSON data, JSON string, and we're going to call this footer nav. And I'm going to paste this all in, and I'm going to take a bunch of it out. So what I want to actually do is steal my URL from here and put it here. And I'm going to take my child out. I don't believe I need a comma after that. For this one, I'm going to do the same thing down here. And this way I just have to type significantly less because I'm just doing these first items on all of them. So it should make it way faster. Couple more and then we will be good to go. Last one here. And we should be good to go there. Hit save, come back here, scroll down to where my nav is, and this one we want to set to our footer nav, and you can see it is pulling in. So now we can determine what we want these to be for as far as our dynamic data. I'm going to come in here. Content is going to be item dot label and item dot URL. Okay, so those should be good. We just need to style these up a little bit. Let's go. I want to add in a gap on this. Content gap is going to be a little bit too much for my liking. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to go content gap divided by 2. And that automatically auto wraps my calc and my variable for me. So I'm pretty happy with that. Next, we're going to jump over to the contact one. And again, these ones I am going to do very similar, but I'm going to do them manually. So I have to duplicate my link because there's going to be 2 of them. And my last one is going to be just text inside of it. All right. So my very first one, we're going to set this to get free quote. And our link is going to be get quote. Our second one is going to be our phone number, and this we can get from our options page, options.metabox. And here you can see it's showing me biz settings dot phone pretty. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to do tell actually paste, and phone link I believe is the proper one. We can come back and double check. Phone link it is, so we should be good on that one. And then our last one, our text here, we're gonna have to put a class in. Let's call this address, because that's what it is. Color white. Helps if I spell right. There we go. And then for that one, we can do the same thing, except we're just gonna go address. And you can see we got that set up there. What we can probably do is text wrap of balance, and that makes it look nice there. We may even, if we go and look at our biz settings, really should be put onto the second line there, but I'm not sure how I want to force that one right now. I'm going to leave it as is for now, and we'll come over to our hours now. And I think this is something that I'll end up adding in as business settings, but for now I'm just gonna hard code them in. So if I look at here, we have Monday through Friday. Here, Saturday and Sunday. Okay. I really should have done a better job of labeling those before we bend them. So I'm going to take that off, and go footer hours. And just so that these match. All right, so we got those in there. What I do want to do on this second one is do a modifier class, and I'm going to do closed, and we're going to do color of text light muted. So it's a little bit less there. I'm going to hit save. One thing I actually do want to do on a few of these is add in an icon. So I'm going to wrap this in a div. I'm going to wrap this in a div. And inside here, I'm going to add an SVG. Move that to the top. And here, add an SVG to the top. Call this our inner wrapper. I'm going to set this to flex row, go center, center, and I'm going to add in a gap, but really I want this to be that's probably too small. Let's go 1M. Actually, what I'm going to end up doing is this. I'm going to delete this one, duplicate it, pull it down. We're going to go inline size of 2 rem of 20 pixels. And we'll go fill of primary. Okay, so let's come back to our wrapper here. 1M is going to be too much. Let's go back to 0.5, 0.3. On my column wrapper, I want to set this here and here. Perfect. My gap needs to be content gap divided by 2, just like the others were. Perfect. Hit save. Let's take a look on the front end. See what we got going on here. Okay, it's coming together here. Our links are working. Let's copy over our text on these. Okay, so my card, I am going to flex column. We'll go center, left, gap. Want this to be pretty tight together, and I'm going to put padding of space excess. We're going to go background of primary trans 30 and radius of radius. And then on my heading, font weight is going to be 600. Color is going to be primary, not primary dark, just primary. And here our color is going to be white, and our font size is going to be text S. Make that a little bit smaller. Let's double check here. And I need a border as well. It's going to be 1 pixel solid primary. Okay. Hit save. Let's check out the front end here. I think this is going to have to drop down a little bit. Let's go 20. Let's try that. Okay. Now we just need to finish our spacing between the top bar and bottom bar. I'm going to exit out of this. I'm not going to put any props in for this right now because I can always do that later when we come back to it. I like my spacing everywhere around here. I think what I might do is on all of my columns is I'm going to make my gap here a little bit bigger. Let's go space L. I like that a little bit more. Okay. So before we go into making this responsive, let's just set a gap of space XL here. And let's see. What I wanted to do was put a divider in here. So let's go. And I know we used to have utility class. I don't know if it still exists in here, borders and dividers. Okay, let's look at our cheat sheet. So we wanted maybe divider all. Let's take a look what that does. Don't know if that ended up doing anything for us. Let's take a look here. Dividers and borders. I might not even actually have to have this in here. try this. I don't know if that's going to work here. Let's inspect and take a gander. And I don't even see that on there. Well, that's because I put it on the wrong spot. That doesn't help me. Let's try that again. Okay, we got divider top in there now, but I don't see any CSS for it. All right, maybe that's something we'll come back to. It might not be fully finished in ACSS 4 because that's not fully released yet. Yeah, you can kind of see I have this divider line in here, which I don't have now. One thing I do want to do lastly is on my wrappers here. I want to create a hover, and we'll go with does not seem like that is working for me. Let's test it on the front end here. Probably helps if I use background instead of color. And then you know it works. There we go. I like that. Okay, so now we just have to play around with the responsiveness of this. And if I come back up to my content wrapper, this is going to be the thing that we need to change. And I think what I might do is just change this into an auto grid. So I'm going to take my gap off for now. I'm going to delete all this and I'm going to go auto grid. And then So then up here, I want my grid gap to be space L. Okay, so now as we narrow this down, everything should collapse for us all the way down. And I'm quite happy with that. All right, let's jump back to the front end and take a look here again. We got our navigation all going here. Got our footer all set up with our links looping through some of it. We got social icons. We got some dynamic data pulling in here. So I'm pretty happy with this. This video went way longer than I expected it to, so I apologize. All right, we're gonna do a quick cut here. I told you I'd come back and look at the last few outstanding things here. So I'm gonna jump into the builder really quick. Or actually, before we jump into the builder, one thing I wanted to show you is that my gutters are showing a little differently here in my header. So in order to do that, for my top bar inner, I had my gutter set here. I'm just going to go ahead and remove that on that one. And then on my inner, my gutter here, I don't need to have that in there as well. If I save that, refresh, try that once more, you can see now we're getting to that gutter, like our full site width is there. Okay, so I'm going to exit out of that. I'm going to come into my component here, click on my Etch nav. I'm going to scroll down. I put a comment in here. Let's see if I can find it. My drop down color here. So what I ended up doing is targeting my Etch nav drop down, and inside it we're looking for a nav item hover, and then I'm also doing it for the focus within, and I'm just setting a background of var hover on that. So I completely added this in. It was not in here previously, and that way when I hover on an item here, it's not controlling anything up here, but it is here. And you can see if I tab through here, it's showing that link there, or the background color there as well. And then lastly is going to be our footer. Hit save. I'm going to exit. And on my footer, my bottom bar, really helped to just go to automatic CSS docs and went to dividers, and you can just see all I really needed to do is add either border block end, border block start, and divider. There is a dark version and a light version. So for mine, I went with the light version, and if we look on the front here, you can see we have that divider showing up here just as I wanted from our Figma project. You can see on the Figma, I did have it expanding the entire way, but I actually like it better like this. So I'm going to leave it this way. And then the last thing that I did not do with my footer is I would actually make this into a component. I'm going to click save, hit exit, and I'm going to take this section out of here so we are just left with our skip links, our header, our main content, and our footer. And again, on my footer, I think one last thing, I keep saying one last thing, but on this I need to add in my ID of footer, so that way when we are targeting our skip link with our footer here, it actually goes to the right spot. So that resolves those last little things, and in our next video we are going to dive into just starting on the home page and specifically building out the hero here. If I zoom out a little bit, we can see I don't know why it's zooming so much on me. Is we're going to build out this hero section together. I'm also, which you don't see here in the Figma, is going to be putting in a kind of a background design within this background color. So you'll get to see some linear gradient work there. So it'll be a fun video there. So stay tuned for that one. Thanks for watching. Drop a like, drop a comment, subscribe if you haven't. Drop some comments about what you're liking about this series, any help along the way, or what you're looking to hopefully learn along the way. Thanks, guys.